Good evening. My name is Clint Schroeder. I'm the president and executive publisher for the Hagedon Media and Hagedon newspaper groups. On behalf of the Joint Public Policy Committee representing the Coeur d'Alene Regional, Hayden, Post Falls, and Rathdrum Chambers of Commerce, in partnership with the Coeur d'Alene Post Falls Press, welcome to the 2024 Town Hall Candidate Forums. These forums provide a unique opportunity to connect with the candidates who seek to serve our community. Tonight's events will be hosted by two esteemed business leaders, Hilo Hancock, CEO of Beacon Clinic, and Tyrell Stevenson, Legislative Director of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. This year, our moderators will sit down with each candidate to discuss several of the most pressing issues in Kootenai County. By meeting with our candidates one-on-one in a more casual environment, we aim to provide our voters with a better understanding of each candidate's point of view.
Well, next we have the pleasure of speaking with the incumbent and challenger candidates for District 4 Representative, Seat B. And our first candidate is the incumbent Representative Elaine Price. Thanks for coming by and welcome. Why don't you take a minute and explain why you're running for this office again?
Hi, my name is Elaine Price. I'm your current state representative for District 4 Seat B. I have worked hard these last 2 years being North Idaho's voice in Boise. I have a proven track record of being a principled leader and a fierce advocate for values and principles that matter most to Idahoans. I look forward to hearing from the people of the community, finding out what they are concerned about, and how I can continue to be the voice of North Idaho.
All right, thanks. From your view, what was one good thing that came out of the most recently concluded session, and what was one negative thing?
I think I'm very proud of Senator Taves and I championed House Bill 498, which was the Online Child Protection Act, which requires adult content websites to age verify so that we hopefully can keep that information away from minors. So that's one thing that I'm very happy that we got passed, and it passed both the House and the Senate and then got signed by the governor. One thing that I think I wished we would have gotten maybe some more things for, like we tried to do diversity, equity, inclusion, trying to get it out of our higher ed. And I wish that's something that we would have been able to get through, but it got stalled over in the Senate side. So,
okay. Speaking of the governor, how would you assess the relationship between the legislature and the governor while you served? And how do you see yourself maybe changing that relationship or maybe doing some of the same things?
I feel he didn't veto that much legislation while we were in session. There were a few, and he gave his reasons to why. And like, for instance, he vetoed a driver's ed bill last session, and it was brought back this session with the changes that he recommended, and it got signed into law. So I feel that the legislature works with him as much as possible. I know that there's a lot of communication with his office as the legislation is going through to make sure that if he has concerns, that they're addressed before it gets to him so that it won't be vetoed. So I feel that we just need to continue with that relationship and continue to listen to what he has to say and see if we can't pass legislation that we all agree on, that we can get it all the way through.
All right, thank you for that. So the last question is, would you give the legislature a letter grade for its public education funding? And please explain your answer.
I had a feeling you were going to ask about education. We have funded education the 2 sessions that I've been in. We've increased the funding for education both years. So I would give it an A. I do know that we struggled with, they put the funding in a bucket, and it had to do with average daily attendance versus enrollment. And so there was money left in that bucket. And we worked the entire session to resolve that issue so that the schools would get that money. And we passed legislation at the end of the session to make sure that that happened. Education was talked about both sessions the entire time. So it is a big focus of our legislative body. We know that it's, and I'm on the education committee, so we know that it's a constitutional requirement for the state to provide public education. So I do think that we still need to be fiscally conservative when it comes to education, that we need to make sure that we're funding the needs, not the wants. And I think that there's things that we could do to streamline it better so that the funding's going to where it needs to go versus getting spent on other things. So I am in full agreement that our public education needs to be taken care of and financially taken care of.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming down. If you'd like to take a minute and just offer any final thoughts you might have for voters in District 4.
No, I just really appreciate you guys putting this on, giving me a chance to hear what our community is thinking about, concerns that they have. I am running because I want to continue to be North Idaho's voice in Boise. I'm just an average citizen who wants to make sure that our concerns are being met up here in North Idaho. And my website is elaineforcda.com and at Facebook at Elaine for North Idaho. And I would appreciate a vote for Elaine Price on May 21st.
All right. Well, we really appreciate it. It's great to take the time to get to know you a little more and so the voters can get to know you.
Absolutely.
And, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
We are now going to meet Dave Raglin, the second candidate for State Representative District 4, Seat B. Thank you for joining us, Dave. Please take a minute to introduce yourself and explain to our audience why you're running for the position of State Representative in District 4.
Well, I'm again Dave Raglin. I'm running for the seat, District 4B here, and I'm married to a local, born and raised. My wife, she's born and raised here in Coeur, Elaine, and along with her entire family. They're all born and raised here in North Idaho. So I kind of want to step up as a voice for hearing the voices that I hear from them that are part of this community. And the biggest part of running for this is just having my experience that I have with Fortune 100 companies, working for UPS, BNSF Railway and Management, which I retire here the next month. And using my resources there, working with government and local cities and counties and stuff like Sandpoint Bridge and stuff like that, my territories that across the areas that I think I can offer great experience in that realm for there. And of course, my wife and I own a local business where we employ 34 people. You know, we have Coordinated Services of Idaho. We work with special needs adults here or developmentally disabled adults. From that area, we help them get independent. And we see some of the issues with them. We have direct with employees around here, and we know what's going on because we feel it from them in housing and in cost of living and all the issues that I think that we're all trying to tackle this election season.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Dave. And congratulations on your upcoming retirement.
Thank you.
We're going to start with the first question. And remember, you have 2 minutes to answer this. From your perspective, what was one good thing that came out of the most recent Idaho legislative session? And conversely, what was one not so good thing that came out of the session?
I think that I still was unsure at the end of what we went with the library issue. So, I mean, whether that was on hold, and I think a lot of us were following there. I did not see that till the end. I think the one only positive thing that I see that was coming out of this session was more of, as I'm trying to sit there and look and think back, that there's a couple of them here that I was trying to make sure of, but it's that might be a tough one for me too. I think I was more concerned about what we were going to do with changing the laws with the library session, obviously, and how that was going to look like from a legislative perspective. I think, which is an important issue for so many parents, that how do we govern that? And we don't need more government, but I think we need more of the parents that need to be involved with that. I think we don't let influence the public libraries, things that we already have laws in the book before this session that dictated where they were. Now, then when we started to change things, we get more government involvement. I think that's what we want less of. And I think parents need to step up in some of these situations, and some of the things that I see there that, I don't let my kid go to the park at 4 years old. It's a public park. I'm going to be there to make sure that my values are instilled and that he's protected from what I see. And I think that's some of the issues that when I see the legislature in this session, we need to look at that from that perspective and make sure that it's less government from my position.
Okay, thank you. Dave, so the second question we have for you, also you'll have 2 minutes to answer, is how would you assess the relationship between the governor's office and the legislature down in Boise? And how do you see yourself making that relationship as effective as possible for the citizens of Idaho if elected?
I think within that, we look at it overall. I mean, I take the positives. I think when we look at us as a state, we see the news, the press, we see we're a redder state, we're getting redder, or people wish to move here for those things. But I think the overall session with Governor Little, look at the things, the positive things he's done. He supports having law enforcement at the border. He's sending law enforcement, our own law enforcement, to help protect the border. Those are some of the things that we see like there. I think that the feeling that we need down there is that he's willing to reach across the aisle. He's done so many good things. He's kept Idaho open during COVID. I mean, where a lot of states weren't. I mean, a lot of people that need to understand that here are the governors that's trying to work with all the parties within what's going on in Boise. And I think that as some of the challenge that he may have is that how do you strengthen that within our own Republican Party, and how do we back those that are already in office to keep Republicans there? And I think that's a huge issue for us. I think for the voters to understand that they need somebody that's going to represent the Republican Party. And that's what I'm running for. I'm running for the Republican Party. And I think what we need to make sure is that in that understanding that I'm the voice for the people to let the governor know. And that's what we really need, is to let him know what the voters are asking and not be representative of an organization separate from the Republican Party. And I think that's what's most important in representing the people.
Okay. And the final question is a little more specific. And this is one that gets a lot of attention each year, certainly during the legislative session. And that's about funding public education. And the question we have for you is what grade, if you were grading how the legislature did, what grade would you give its funding of public education here in Idaho? And explain that answer to us, please.
I think I was going to give it an answer. I think if I have to give it a grade, like an A, B, C, something like that, no, okay. I think it's a work in progress. I will give it a B+, because I think that the governor has done so many different projects in trying to reach out in education. You've seen that every time he's stepped up to the different programs that he's helped funded, things that he's trying to get through the legislature to get them going. And I think when it comes to education, it's not just about raising taxes. That's not what he's wanting. It's not about raising how much the bonds and how that does. We need to work together with our educators. And I think that's the biggest issue that he's facing, is that when we look at the housing crisis, it faces educators too. They don't make a whole lot in our state. And we need to make sure that what we can do to help foster that together. not by dividing each other, by coming together and say, no, it's an issue for all because we live here. Education is not going to go away. Those high schools aren't going to go away. NIC, none of these are going to go away. So we need to come with solutions and not argue about things that are going to be really displace the voter. And I think that's what goes on, is so much of not coming together and say, here's a solution. And I think that's what I'd help bring to the governor and help bring to the legislature. Let's move with solutions that can help. What could that be? Is there some type of things that we see going on around the country? Because I know there's other things in Texas. I know there's things going on in Louisiana that they're trying to help in education and help in their funding there, and what that looks like, where it's not just put on the taxpayer. And I think that's what you need to start looking at, where you have different types of ideas, whether it's other groups that help with it, and foster our educators. I mean, I think it's the most important. Without education, I don't know how many people wouldn't be around if we didn't have a higher institution or a higher education. So, I mean, it's something that we need to really look at and understand, and not just think that it's a issue that is related to taxes. It's an issue related to how we are as a human life.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, Dave, that's the last of our 3 questions. You'll now have 1 minute to share any final thoughts about yourself or your candidacy, and really tell the voters why they should choose you in this upcoming primary election.
I think the biggest aspect is, if I look over the camera, I want to be a voice. I want to be a voice for all those that were born and raised here. I want to be a voice for the people that you hear every day on the street. Obviously, like I've said, I own a local small business with my wife. We see the effects of what the economy is doing. We see the effects of housing. We see the effects of education. We work with so many different agencies in the area. From when we look at that and how they're struggling, and just not only just our business, but whether you work in CDA Concrete or the coffee shop, the cost of living is driving our local workforce. And I think people got to understand that the dynamics of economy is what I'm trying to bring and teach them, and to educate and to come together. If we just don't educate us together, that's why I'm running. And I'm running for the sake of all my family. And so that we can help make an understanding of, we can solve these issues. We don't need to argue about them. We just need to bring the community together. And I think that's the most important aspect that I can bring.
Well, very good. Well, Dave, we really appreciate you being here this evening and telling the voters about where you're at on some of these things, and telling people more about yourself. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again to all the candidates who participated tonight. A very special thank you to our moderators, Hilo Hancock and Tyrell Stevenson, for their excellent questions and moderation. Your dedication to our community is admirable. I'd also like to thank the members of my team at the Hagedorn Media Group and the Coeur d'Alene Press. Special thanks to the team at Quicksilver Studios. And thanks to all of you who took the time to watch. This year's 5 primary election town hall candidate forums allowed us to become more familiar with the 13 Kootenai County local race candidates. We sincerely thank those candidates who took the time to discuss what's important to county voters. We at the Hagedorn Media Group take the job of providing voters with the most relevant candidate information very seriously. We hope this town hall forum has helped inform those still uncertain about whom they will cast that final vote for in the coming weeks. Along with these forums, you can find our comprehensive voter's guide at www.cdapress.com. Most importantly, don't forget to vote. It's one of the most important and powerful rights and responsibilities we have as Americans. Thank you, and good night.